the Ortho Welder from Yates and Bird. Yates and Bird has a 60-year history of manufacturing soldering equipment, so you know that this machine is likely to last forever, just like the original soldering machine. And recently we've expanded into the orthodontic market due to the demand for our trusted name in orthodontics. During development, we focused on trying to make this a very valuable machine. After all, if you're spending money and taking up bench space for something, you want it to be as worthwhile as possible and have as many functions as it can. So it is an orthodontic welder, of course, but it's also an electric soldering machine and a wire annealer. Let's go through those one at a time. Orthodontic welding, you can weld in two different ways. The first way is here in between the copper tips, or the jaws, and the tips turn so you can select any combination you like of these tips based on the shape and the coverage area and how much surface area you want to be touching when you're welding. And you can use it to weld things like bands and wires and brackets and any manufactured or repaired appliances. The second way you can weld is remotely. Let's say the item is large enough to fit in within these jaws. You can use the remote cords, and you can weld with these copper tips at any location you choose. The second function of the machine is an electric soldering machine, and again, you're going to be able to solder in two ways. The first way to solder is remotely by replacing the copper welding tips with a carbon point. And a brass tip. And then, of course, you can use solder and flux, and you can weld, you can solder remotely. The second way that's popular to solder for items like tongue spikes or tiebacks on a retainer is here with this chuck that you can see is going to hold a pre-soldered electrode. If you insert the pre-soldered electrode into the chuck, soldering with this pre-soldered electrode here, you're going to take the wire appliance and you're going to hold it up to the pre-soldered electrode while at the same time drawing the heat towards you with the carbon point. You're going to draw it toward the solder tip, and it's going to solder to the wire appliance. So you can remove it, and now you've got this attached to the wire, and you can do whatever you need with it for the appliance. Last but not least, the machine's got a function for annealing, which basically means taking the temper or the stress out of wire so it can have more usefulness to you. You do that by stretching a piece of wire in between these two little knobs. They're here and here, and then you're going to tighten the nuts. And if you watch this area here, it's going to turn first golden and then red. And you can see the smoke rising from it as you slightly anneal it, just to take some of the stress away. The chuck to hold the pre-soldered electrode, both cores, the brass tip, the carbon point, both welding copper electrodes, a piece of solder and flux to get you started, and non-asbestos heat sink to insulate areas while you're soldering. It even comes complete with a foot switch, which is useful in all of the applications.